Okay, brilliant. We have everybody, I think. So welcome. My name's Helen. I'm going to be doing the hosting and the Q&A for today's Lightning Talks. Little bit last minute, so if you see me looking over there, that's my running order and cheat sheets. If I forget to do something, please let me know. We are being recorded. So I believe first out the gates, we have Benga, who is talking to us about financial services to bootcamp. So that sounds pretty interesting. So Benga, do you want to take it away for us and give us a little introduction about yourself?
Afternoon, guys. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I won't be presenting, unfortunately. So I've got my cheat sheet. So if you see me looking away as well, I'm doing the same thing. So yeah, once again, I'm Benga. I've always sort of had a financial services background. In uni, I studied finance. My future was always heading down the finance route. You know, had this big dreams of being this big time investment sort of banker sort of thing. Yeah, I spent 6 years in financial services within wealth management, delivering investment and pension advice to clients and helping them out with mortgages and that sort of thing. However, in 2019, things started to change for me. I started seeing these apps come out like Meal Pals, where all of a sudden I order my meal in advance before I go and pick it up. And I was like, wait a minute, the world is changing here big time. Like, this is crazy. My brother's always been in the industry. He's been in the industry for about 20 years. I have most of my friends in the industry. So they always talk tech to me, but it just meant nothing. And I remember I used to make fun of them because I was like, wait, why are you learning how to use a computer? Like, it doesn't take a genius to know how to use a computer, because I just didn't have a clue. But then, yeah, 2019, my friend invited me to his office. I spent some time with him. I saw how they did things, and it piqued my interest a lot. You know, I wanted to move into something that would stimulate me. So I decided to do a boot camp with General Assembly. Why did I decide boot camp? I just wanted to be around like-minded individuals. And I did some research, and I thought this would be the best way to enhance my knowledge about software engineering and programming in general. And yeah, just being around like-minded individuals who were on the same journey as myself. That was the decision around that. And I'd seen people on LinkedIn who had shared the experiences of being on a boot camp. They shared some really cool apps, and I just thought to myself, you know what, I'm up for this challenge, and jumped into it. What was the boot camp like? Boot camp was quite good. I learned a lot. It was tough, relentless. You know, I had to change the way I think, and it's easy for me to say that now, looking back, because yeah, I didn't realize it at the time, but I had to change the way I was thinking about things. I had to become very independent quickly, and I learned that in about the first week, because I sort of had a conversation with the instructor around, okay, I've paid for this boot camp. I've asked you for help. Why are you not helping me? And he's like, the conversation was, I'm not here to help you. I'm here to teach you how to help yourself. And I started to think about that. What does this guy mean? I remember complaining to my brother, oh, this happened. And he said, well, welcome to the game. Remember, people who use computers are stupid, right? And I was like, oh, here we go. Yeah, it was quite a fun experience. Learned mainly how to use JavaScript and a bit of Python. Fell in love with it ever since. React is something I love working with. You know, especially now that we have hooks and you can try out many different hooks out there. And there's just, you know, it's not just a product. You have to keep on learning, which is one thing I like about this. And I've realized that, yep, I've signed up for a lifelong learning journey, which is quite amazing. What's life been like outside of the boot camp since it's been complete? It's been quite interesting. I've come across many different obstacles, but I love it. I use it to challenge myself and learn from them, and I use them to develop myself. Because one thing which is quite unfortunate, and which is why I really wanted to do this, is sometimes when when you come across people, especially when you go to interviews and that sort of thing, they sort of look down at you because you've been at a boot camp, which is quite unfair because you have people coming from different backgrounds within those boot camps. You know, you have, I came across a guy recently who all his life had worked with his hands, and all of a sudden he's learning how to build software. And he just, you look at people like that and you think, oh, wow, how did you go in a space of 3 months being a plumber to now being able to, you know, build apps that work on a computer or mobiles, for example. So it's quite interesting because, you know, you meet people who come from different backgrounds and different, you know, they bring different cognitive diversity and ideas into what it is that you're doing. And for me personally, it's changed my life a lot, big time. It's changed the way I think, the way I do research into stuff, the way I tackle challenges and problem solve. Currently, I'm a teaching assistant for a boot camp myself, a different boot camp. And I quite like it because it's a mix of what I enjoyed most about financial services, helping people solve problems, talking to them. So here I get to talk to the students about their code. I help them review their code, and I act like, my job is to act as a mentor to them and just to ease them along the way, make sure that they understand things, give them time to sort of teach them what it is that they learned or what it is that they're struggling with, to help them develop themselves and just be a presence there to show them that if I can do it, you can certainly do it, sort of thing. Yeah, it's been an amazing journey. I've really liked being able to collaborate with others. You know, I like the flexibility that comes with the industry, and I'm hoping, you know, the industry will keep on growing and become a bit more diverse and inclusive, to be honest, because yeah, it just helps you with whatever it is that you're doing, and it brings new and different ideas to the table. So yeah, that'll be it from me. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Benga. That was really interesting, and I personally want to say huge kudos for doing that without slides. That is something that I aspire to be able to speak that confidently and that comfortably for 5 minutes without, you know, someone's attention being directly on me rather than on slides. So I thought that was excellent and very insightful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Benga? And whilst you're thinking about that, obviously we are at the Lightning Talks. Feedback is crucial. I myself have gone through this process and will continue to go through this process. Dom, would you be good enough to drop the feedback form into the chat for me? This is where I find out that actually that's my job and I don't have it. I'm not sure. But hopefully Dom's going to drop that feedback form in the chat for us, because feedback is just really helpful and really crucial, especially for new speakers. So thank you, Dom. Thanks for bailing me out. Okay, does anyone have any questions for Benga?
I have one, if that's okay. So Benga, I really loved your story. So I'm actually a technologist in financial services, so it was really interesting to hear the story and the synergy. Yep. One thing I wanted to ask, because you talked about the experiences of yourself and of others that you've been helping along the way, is there any particular transferable skills that either you've identified or others you've been working with have identified that you think are really good to bring into the industry based on your prior experience?
That's quite an interesting question. I have been thinking about it a lot as well. Outside of just thinking about, you know, constantly thinking about products, I'd like to say collaborating with people, managing people and, you know, different stakeholders. That's one thing that you know, creating relationships, I think is quite important, because one thing I've quickly learned is you can easily clash with people, especially when you pair programming. How do you manage that relationship? You know, it's a skill. You know, someone's doing something you don't like. Okay, how do we manage that? Because you have to adapt to people thinking differently. And one thing that even with the students I'm working with at the moment, one thing I always say to them is there's so many different ways to achieve the same result. So you might come up with a different idea. I might come up, however, we've all achieved the same answer. So we should always try to respect one another, and which is why I kind of mentioned having that cognitive diversity is quite important.
Yeah.
Being able to respect other people's ways of thinking. So yeah, I'd say that working with people and collaborating and knowing how to manage relationships is quite important. And you learn these things, especially for me, you had to work with clients face to face. You needed to know how to manage those relationships. So yeah, I'd say that's one thing.
Brilliant. Thank you. And of course, David's going to be talking to us later about pair programming as well. So there might be some overlaps there. So thank you for the question, Carly. And thanks again, Benga.
Thank you. And
Carly, you can come off mute and hand straight over.
Oh, fun. Okay, cool.
So Carly's going to be talking to us today about E2E tests with BDD specifications. I'm really hoping this is another mashup. It is another mashup. Excellent. Your screen share's good. Over to you, Carly.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, everyone. So for those who don't know me, my name is Carly Richmond. And yes, exactly, as Helen said, what I want to talk about today is combining techniques. So one of the things that obviously we'll find as we're building out software, you might come across a particular practice that works absolutely perfectly on its own, but sometimes when you combine it together with another technique, you'll find that it's a far more powerful result that you get. And today I want to share such an example. So based on my experiences of building software, I want to show you about the reasons why you should combine behavioral specifications elicited through BDD with end-to-end testing. So I'll talk about the key benefit that I've found while I've been using these techniques together. And I'll also show you a very simple example using Cucumber and Cypress to help you get started as well. So what is a mashup for anyone who's not heard of this term? Well, it's when you take two songs and you combine them together in the hopes of making something a little bit catchier, because that's what we all want. We want a catchy tune when we're listening to music. And one great example that kind of came out of the lockdown last year that inspired this talk in a way was the mashup that Turhal created. He combined Dua Lipa's Hallucinate with the BBC News theme. More than happy to share it afterwards and get musical thoughts. But it was actually pretty good. I'm not a big Dua Lipa fan personally, but I quite liked it. And it actually won Remix of the Year at the BBC Radio 1 Lockdown Awards, which is pretty cool. And it's Turhal's spirit that I want to try and transpose from music into technology, because ultimately we can combine different practices together to help us build better products. And as you'll come to see, that's why we should be combining BDD and E2E together. So let me explain what each of these terms are. So behavioral driven development, or BDD for short, is basically a practice that evolved from the test driven development movement. And it is where features are discovered in partnership with the people that you're actually going to use your product. So you work together to specify a set of examples, and those examples then drive the implementation and the testing of your features. Meanwhile, end-to-end testing, or E2E for short, refers to the ability to test the workflow from the end user perspective. You're creating the product experience from how they would see it. And that means that you can test the entire product from their viewpoint, from the beginning of their journey all the way through to the end. And it's that user perspective aspect of end-to-end testing that complements behavior-driven development. The behavioral specifications that you're eliciting through BDD are ultimately exposing their viewpoint of the product to you because you're working in conjunction with them. So in short, it's helping you walk in your user's shoes. So you can take the perspective that the examples provide to you and document them in a format that is understandable by yourself as a technologist and them as a business stakeholder. And it can provide a common understanding of how the system is intended to behave. So let me go through an example showing this. Now, I have picked Cucumber and Cypress for this session purposefully. This week, Angular announced preliminary plans that they're going to potentially be deprecating Protractor in 2022, which is the main end-to-end testing framework that a lot of people in the Angular community use. So hopefully this example will give those of you who are thinking, panic, what do I do? An option to start investigating a viable alternative. And Cypress is certainly one of those. So here I've got my specification. This is my BDD example, basically. And it's specified in the Gherkin format, which means that I can specify in plain English-like terms a common behavior with my business partners that they can understand and then that I can develop and test against. And there's elements of them that are also reusable. So I've got these common terms about navigation, the actions I want to do, but I can also then pass in particular parameters, such as my title, or even the particular data results, in the case the artist that I want to display. And that means I can also reuse the same scenario for happy and unhappy cases, which is a good thing. And then those of you who want to see what happens with the code, well, here is the testing code that actually connects to that feature. So with Cucumber, each scenario line keyword, that given, that when, and that then, is passed to a particular callback. So the example I've got here is my given. So you see given, I am on the home page, which was in our scenario. What I'm going to do is I'm going to invoke the Cypress command to visit that particular page. And the same thing applies to a then statement when we're asserting a particular result. So what you'll see here is I'm passing in a table definition, which is a Cucumber utility for that data table that I showed you before. And what happens with that is that when I pull it in, Cucumber gives me utilities to extract the information using rows or map functionality. And then I can bring in Cypress to do some meaningful assertions once I get the element off the page. So here I'm pulling out each of my artists, and using should, I'm chaining together multiple expectations to compare not only the length of the collection, which is appearing on the page, but also more meaningful things, such as what the artists are, to make sure that the artists are appearing on the page, and also in the correct order, which if you're doing things like sorting locally on a page are quite important things that you might want to capture. So just like a coda in music, we're reaching the end of this talk. So let me summarize some of the key lessons that I've shown today. So firstly, combining BDD and particularly the behavioral specifications formulated through it with end-to-end testing is a really good thing to do, because it helps showcase the user perspective in what you're building and makes it easier to understand how they are intended to use your tool, which is vital when you're trying to write testing for the front end. I've walked you through a brief example, which you can scan the QR code if you want to check out the code on my personal GitHub. And that's about it. So thank you for taking the time to find out with me why combining BDD and ETE in front-end applications is a good thing. I hope that you not only take the knowledge of what these terms are away with you today, but also I'd like to encourage you to try and figure out for yourselves if there's any other techniques that you're using on their own that you can mash up together to make a better result. I'm more than happy for you to reach out if you want to have a chat about testing or want to ask me more questions, but I'll take any questions just now that people have as well. And thanks for listening.
Thanks, Carly. I do love your mashup talks. They always they make me look at the world in a different way. So I appreciate that. I'm always like, I've never really thought about that. So yeah, thank you, very insightful as always. Does anybody have any questions for Carly before we move on?
Sure, Alex.
Have I been unmuted?
You are off mute. Yep. Well, I can't control your muting, don't worry. I don't have that much power. I'll just lower your hand. There you go.
Oh, no, I'll just load it. Right, thanks, Carly. I knew some of what you were talking about because I did BDD 8-9 years ago once. Yeah. So I know about Cucumber and Gherkin. I'm kind of thrown because I actually used to live in Cyprus, and it took me some time to figure out that you weren't actually saying Cyprus, you were saying Cypress. May I just ask, how does Cypress fit into this picture? What's it actually doing?
Yeah, no worries. So Cypress is a testing framework. It covers loads of different types of tests, but what I'm using it here in this example for is end-to-end testing. Right. So basically you can think of it in a primitive way as simulating things like clicks and stuff. So maybe years ago, you would have maybe used techniques such as Selenium, maybe to do that kind of thing. And although Selenium
that's pretty much exactly what I would have
used. So Selenium is still available today, but there's other viable alternatives that are coming onto the market. And Cypress is certainly gaining a lot of popularity. It's Selenium free, which is one a potential advantage because Selenium can give you some traps as well. It's also got a really nice, concise syntax. And as I've been learning it recently, I've quite liked that. And also it's got pretty good community support that's coming out, and it's also framework agnostic. So for example, looking at web frameworks, you've got the Angular versus React versus Vue divide across the place. Protractor, although it can be used with other frameworks, is quite tightly coupled to Angular. So that can put some people off. So therefore Cypress is a viable alternative that is agnostic. So you can pick it up with a React app or whichever one you like. So given the news this week, thankfully had an inkling it was coming. So I'd started looking at alternatives, and certainly Cypress is the one that looked great to me. So that's why I've shared this example today as well, because I know that further down the road, other people are going to have to migrate off of Protractor onto something else. So this is a viable alternative. So that's what you can use Cypress for, and that's what it's for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Carly. Okay, we are going to move on to Hasan, who is going to be talking to us about demystifying DevOps, and his screen share is going to work perfectly because we didn't test it. So over to you, Hasan. And your screen share is working perfectly. We can't hear you currently, though.
Can you hear me too?
Yep, loud and clear.
Yeah, okay. So first of all, thank you for today's talk, and also thank you, Benga and Charlie, for this nice talks. I learned a lot. So the first thing that I am talking about is there is no best practice. So what all I am talking can be useful for some of you and can be less useful for others. So we will talk a bit about DevOps and especially about DevOps culture. And that's all about. So a few things about me. I have more than 10 years experience in IT, especially focused on CI/CD and testing. I have a German background. I am from Switzerland, and we talk here German, French, and English. So due to my pronunciation is maybe a bit different than yours, I am sorry for that. So to Calms, which is the Calms framework, a successful DevOps model, is a conceptual framework. It is used to assess a company's readiness to adopt a DevOps process and a way to measure success during the DevOps transformations. The Calms model gives a good frame of reference to compare the maturity of DevOps teams. So today we are going to talk about culture in context of DevOps. So making culture function according to DevOps principles. Here are the blockers: dysfunctional cultures. Cultures that are heavily command and control and bureaucratic can be very demotivating place to work, where people are punished for raising problems or knowledge and information is hidden will stop people sharing and collaboration. Where failure is to be something to be avoided, people will try and cover up mistakes rather than to learn from them, and they will be afraid trying new things. So some of them are resistance to change. Not many people like to change their way of working. They have become used to their method of doing things, have their mindset, and frequently unwilling to adjust their usual routine or processes. For leaders or DevOps leaders frequently face resistance during transformation process. Lack of clarity in vision. DevOps transformation without proper plans and strategy make it very difficult to accomplish its goals. Teams do not collaborate. As Benga also says, collaboration is the key success factor. The main goal, what we are all talking about, is how to bring dev teams and operation teams and other teams to work together, thus breaking down the barriers between silos. Environments are not standard. To have standard environment in a world where multiple application services and software versions existing is a key success factor. Not having them or not having production-like test environments frequently results in incidents as inconsistency leads to the unpredictability. So tool sets are in contention. Development IT operations teams frequently use different tool sets, but often they are trying to do the same thing or manage the same piece of work. The challenge is to make sure the right tool is being implemented and that is aligned with all the team goals and company goals. So, benefits of DevOps management. Great teams, less team rotation, faster failure reaction and fixes, improved visibility, continuous learning, increased trust, value versus cost. Benefits of DevOps regarding business. Faster delivery of features, time to market, more stable operating and environments, more time available and to add value rather than fix, maintain, better financial predictability. So how to get there? Trust and empower the people. That is to characterize a generative culture. DevOps rather than our process is a cultural change, it's a mindset change, is that focus on collaboration between separate teams in an organization. All automation and integration of tools are useless unless development, QA, and IT ops professionals work together. Culture, DevOps isn't just one team's jobs, it's everyone's jobs. For example, developer looks at logs and manager might look in analytics, software for the impact, operations look at monitoring tools. If everyone have one source of data and work well together, issues will be resolved quickly. Bring clarity to the DevOps vision. Introduction to DevOps CALM framework can help define the DevOps roadmap and goals, also business goals. CALM is a conceptual framework for to generate a generative culture. That is cross-team collaboration, standard environments, standard DevOps tool chains for across the organization, and having a continuous delivery process. So that is all a bit about. That is what I will talk today. It's a bit more I can talk to tomorrow, but maybe we should stop here. Hello.
Hi, thank you. As someone who's, well, experienced IT before DevOps and during DevOps, and now sometimes I feel like it's after DevOps, depending on where you work, that was very interesting because you do get a huge range of opinions. It's definitely a department that generates a lot of opinion, I would say. Does anybody have any questions for Hasan? Everybody's forming their opinions about DevOps as we speak.
Hey, I believe too much in.
I should raise my hand, but I don't know how to do that. Would I be able to ask a question, please?
Please do.
I had not seen the CALMS framework before, which you mentioned at the start. Where can I go and learn more about that? That looks interesting.
There is a DevOps Institute. It's also in Cloud Foundation, but they divided later into, now it's also in this Linux Foundation organization, a DevOps branch. I can share maybe a bit the group later, the main organization regarding the.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you very much.
If you can pop it in the chat,
it is more or less
good.
organized. Yeah, it is more or less organized by Cloud Foundation and Linux Foundation.
Cool, thank you.
They have own. But it's what works is how to say, there are some. It's mainly about standardizing the DevOps toolchain, okay, the environment as a code, and creating team collaboration so you can bridge the gaps between the silos. That is the main, how to say, the main objectives.
Brilliant. Thanks, Hasan. Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We are going to move on to our final talk of the day. So we have Daf, and he's going to be talking to us about really doing pair programming. So another nice contentious subject that I'm very passionate about. So I'm looking forward to this one. I'll hand over to you, Daf.
Okay, I didn't know it was contentious.
It's always contentious.
Okay.
How do you do it? You know,
I'll make
the best way of approaching it. Yeah, please do. We like a good debate.
Oh, what's it called? Oh. Oh, here we go. Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Wonderful.
Fantastic. You can see it. Okay. So, does your Scrum suck? See, I told you I'd be contentious. Very often, when I see the word agile on a job spec, or somebody mentions that their company is really agile, my heart sinks. I feel like some of these little furry critters in their little lanes pedaling as fast as they can. And it's almost as senseless sometimes as that. So maybe it's possible your Scrum might suck. So 2 years ago, before the apocalypse, I ran a session, a dark agile workshop. So it's a workshop about things that can go wrong with agile and what we as developers could do so that we can stop being screwed by the things that can go wrong and that can make our lives, well, makes it feel like we're one of these little furry critters in a little wheel. So I maintain it doesn't have to be this way, and it could be awesome. And the best thing you could do to improve your time at work and enjoy being a developer and learn more and enjoy working with people would be to do pair programming. So that's the difference between really nasty, horrible, micromanaged, toxic Scrum and lovely extreme programming. The really key thing is pair programming. So it's not like digging a ditch. You could argue that you can look at pair programming as though, well, half the typing is being done. I'm only having half as much work done. It's not really like manufacturing bullets or digging ditches in the 1930s. Every single thing we do is new. No one ever builds the same software twice. It's always something new. So this is the main thing I want to get at, that it's a creative activity and it's not like the sort of thing that Gantt charts were invented for. And it's tempting to obsess about lines of code because that's what you get to see. Now, we've known for really ages and ages and ages that lines of code and how much stuff you produce is a really terrible way to look at it. But certified masters that have gone away for 2 days and got themselves a little piece of paper will be very proud to preach a lot of theory about things they can't really do themselves. So back in 1982, Bill Atkinson, who worked on the original graphics ROM for the Apple Mac and some things before that, very smart guy, doing his graphics algorithms. And one week, His managers have obviously got him under the thumb, and he's reporting how many lines of code you've written this week. And he sarcastically writes -2,000. He's used his brain. He's doing this creative stuff, the real work of development that nobody can see. He's used his brain, and he's discovered, actually, there's a better algorithm for this. So I need to do less typing, and the ROM will work a bit faster. I can use the not much resources available inside the old Apple Mac to draw these windows a bit faster. So it's a game of insight. It's not a game of volume of typing. It's a really stupid measurement. And so often people that run things like Scrum come up with very, very simple-minded and very wrong ways of looking at what we do. And it's really a problem-solving activity. And it's about thinking your way around a problem, which is much easier to do if somebody else is working with you. So I did some maths. I broke out the Python, and I figured out I've done about 7 years of extreme programming. So I've done a little more than 10,000 hours of continuous pair programming. So I've done more than that in my career. I've done about 20 years of coding, but the time spent doing the fun stuff, assuming it's 4 days out of every 5 coding, and it's half an hour of corporate bullshit and an hour for lunch, gives me about 7.5 hours in those 4 days. So over 7 years, that gets me about 10,000 hours. Now I try to pair in as many places as I can, but not all companies are quite so enlightened, let's say. Nobody noticed the bug in my code, never mind. It's a very subtle bug. The main thing it gets you, we talked about this idea that it's a game of insight. You know, it's I'm trying to think my way around a problem, and having somebody else there, they have a different perspective to you, and you have to verbalize your thought process. And then you realize, when you say it, you realize, actually, I haven't thought this through. And you have to think much more clearly to explain things to other people. And they bring a different perspective to things that you can learn from. And if there is an easier way or a quicker way or a better way, it soon becomes a standard across a whole bunch of people. You don't need to have a meeting to agree on code standards or the best way to do stuff. Very slowly over time, it'll organically emerge what's best for the team. And there'll be a team way of doing things. Now, a really long time ago, I got a phone call at about 1 o'clock in the morning from a bunch of quite angry people in New York. The code that you've written does not work. What's wrong with this? And I listen to what they say, and to my horror, I discover our code doesn't do that. So somebody was incentivized to write some code and slip it through the process where nobody was looking. So nobody's paired on it. Nobody else, only one single person knows about this. So I couldn't really help them. And it just goes to show that pair programming disperses, it communicates the knowledge through teams and lets more people see what's going on. So we probably wouldn't have had the bug if more than one person had thought the thing through. There are problems with PRs. This is really complicated. The main gist here is that there are two people working on their own things in isolation, and they use Git and the PR process this technical invention to avoid collaborating with other people. You can avoid working with them for a whole day, and then you can jam all your changes up into a 5-minute wall of code that you can drop on them when they least expect it. And they're going to really love that. And they're totally not going to be obstructive at all. I told you I wouldn't be contentious. So this is a brilliant way of setting people up for conflict. I really hate PRs in every way. It just sets people up for failure. So I have a simpler way of looking at this, that if you're working on something, there's stuff that you can do really easily. That's the green stuff here. So time goes from left to right. And the red stuff is where you get stuck on something you didn't know, or there's some mistake you didn't really understand. So it just takes time. What you're trying to do is think your way around the problem. Doing more typing is not going to help you. Now, if you look at the alternative, you're doing problem solving here, not typing or some manual thing. And if there are two brains on this, it's probably going to get unblocked faster. The other sad thing about Git, there is no finished on a feature branch. This idea, I'm working in my little trench, I'm like the little hamster on his wheel, and going really fast and sort everybody else, and I'm marching to the conclusion. Who cares if the other Jiras don't work? It's not enough for my Jira to succeed. All the other Jiras must fail. It encourages that sort of individuality, encourages all the wrong things for getting a team to work together and for things to work. So I strongly advocate trunk-based development. I've never seen anything else work, and I've done XP for 7 years. So I may be wrong. There may be some other brilliant way of doing it, but I agree with Dave Farley, and he really knows what he's doing. Trunk-based development is awesome, and it's the only way I know to make it work. This is where to get the information from if you're interested. And to be honest, pair programming is the most productive and fun time I've had in my whole career, and it's really awesome. And I can help people to do this. I'm good at doing it. It's just really sad that there doesn't seem to be much of it around. That's it.
Thank you. Thanks, Daf. That was really interesting and exactly perfectly contentious in some ways,
Okay,
not in others.
thanks.
No, that was really insightful, and a lot of the points that you made I identified with quite closely, certainly from some of the pairing experiences I've seen happen, which to your point are not enough. So I'm no longer sure if the phone should be ringing. Should the phone be ringing? Is that your phone? I don't know. It started ringing at the exact right time.
I don't know whose phone it is.
Neither do I. You're the only one talking. Alex, you have a question.
Hi, Duff. I like your idea. I try and encourage communication in people that I work with. Do you have any suggestions for how this sort of pair programming would work in a post-COVID environment where we're going to be hopefully still social distancing and maybe...
Okay, the main thing that makes pair programming different from the kind of open source stuff that people like Linus Torvalds does is that both sides of the pair have to be present and working on it at the same time. You know, you might be working late in a different time zone, but you know, there needs to be some common agreement about when you're going to do this. So I know one guy who his only problem with extreme programming was I need time off. I need to leave work at a certain time to pick my daughter up from school. So it's a big part of it is being able to work synchronously on something. So there's that. I used to do a thing called Follow the Sun development, where we used to have a team in Bournemouth, a team in Singapore, and a team in Seattle. So all 12 hours apart. So you'd walk in the morning, you'd have a handover from people in Singapore. You'd work all day, and then you'd do a handover meeting with the people in Seattle. So occasionally we would do a bit of remote pairing, and it was quite a long time ago, and we used DNC, pretty clunky and nasty, and there's not really enough aspirin in the world to keep doing that. I gather there are some nice IntelliJ tools, and I don't know, I haven't really used them. I've kind of been a bit distracted this last year. I kind of did this talk because I love pair programming, but I haven't done it since the apocalypse. So just my contract sort of came to the end with the apocalypse, and I was due to start a new thing with a holiday company. So you can guess, so that company hasn't died. It just has a lot fewer developers.
I know that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
There are some tools out, but I reckon the biggest obstacle really is agreeing to finding the right person, agreeing in advance what time to set it up. I think that's probably the tricky part.
Brilliant. Right, thank you very much. We're still trying to track down the random alarm noise. I'm kind of hoping it stops when you mute, Daf. I'm not sure if it will.
Okay.
But yes, thank you very much for your talk.
Okay, no worries. Okay, cheers.